Hello my crafty friends, this is Monica from Allsewpetite. Welcome back to my channel. In this video I will walk you through how to make the Maya Toiletry Pouch. To make this pouch you will need to purchase the pattern from my website. You can find the link to the shop and all the supplies I used in this tutorial in the description box below. Maya is an intermediate sewing pattern, but if you are comfortable sewing zippers and curved seams, you should have no problem completing this project. This is a soft and slouchy pouch with a top zipper closure. You can use either a single or double zipper pulls. It features an accent trim along the bottom and a wide rounded base which provides plenty of space for your cosmetics, shaving kit or toiletries. My favorite part of this pouch is the snap connectors on the sides. They provide shaping to the pouch and also act as a convenient handles for easy carrying. Inside you'll find a spacious, fully lined compartment to hold all your essentials, and also a zipper pocket for your smaller items like contact lenses or your jewelry. Maya is the ultimate unisex pouch for those who appreciate style and function. Whether you are looking to organize your daily essentials or searching for the perfect handmade gift, the Maya Toiletry Pouch is a must-have. So if you would like to learn how to make your own version of this pouch, then keep watching. To make the Maya Toiletry Pouch, you will need some external and lining fabric. For my pouch, I decided to mix this cotton fabric and this black corduroy on the outside of my pouch, and I'm going to use this cotton fabric for the lining. But you will notice in the tutorial that I decided to mix things up a little bit, so I cut my zipper pocket from this fabric. So when I look inside my pouch and I open the zipper, I see some extra color. I like to have a pop of color when I look inside my pouch. And I did exactly the same thing for the snap connectors. So those connectors here, I used this lining fabric instead because I think those two prints work really well together. You may also need some non-fraying fabric such as cork, vinyl or for leather if you decided to make your snap connectors from this type of fabric, so you can leave raw edges. Depending on the type of fabric you have chosen for your pouch, you may need to add some interfacing or stabilizer to your fabric. So as an example, if like me you are using very lightweight, thin fabric or fabric that tends to stretch or fray a lot, I highly recommend fusing some woven interfacing to the back of the fabric first. This will give your fabric a little bit of stability, a little bit of structure and strength, and will stop the fabric from stretching or fraying. Maya was designed to be more of a soft and slouchy pouch. So if you are using very heavyweight, sturdy fabrics such as cork, vinyl or maybe wax cotton, you don't really need to stabilize your fabric in most cases. But just in case, if like me you are using lightweight fabric or you still want that extra stability, I highly recommend using more flexible and lightweight stabilizers like fusible fleece. This stabilizer will give your pouch just enough stability so the pouch can hold its shape, as you can see, but is still nice and soft. If you want to make more sturdy pouch, you can use something like Decovil or maybe even foam stabilizer. Those two stabilizers are more sturdy than your fusible fleece, but they are still nice and flexible. I would avoid using something like Pellon Peltex or even Decovil Heavy because they may be a little bit too sturdy for this pouch, but if you really want to use them, I would highly advise using them only on the base and maybe on the bottom panel. But again, this really depends on the type of fabric you are using and also on the type of a sewing machine that you have. You will also need number 5 continuous zipper. The length is provided in the sewing instructions. And you will also need either 1 or 2 zipper pulls. You'll need number 3 zipper, a ruler to take some measurements. This is optional, but you can also add a nameplate or maybe a care label to your pouch. You'll need either 18 millimeters or 25 millimeters D-rings. You'll need 2 of them. You'll need 2 sets of snaps. I'm using 12 millimeters metal spring press snaps. You will also need some tools to set them in. So I have my hole puncher and my hand press ready. I'm going to use multi-surface glue today. You'll need double-sided tape as well. Some clips or pins to hold your fabric in place, scissors, snips, your favorite marking tools. I also like to have a seam ripper on hand, just in case if something goes wrong. If you are using non-fraying fabric for your snap connectors, then take the snap connector pattern piece and use it to cut 4 pieces. If you want, you can cut 2 in different colors. This will give you a little nice accent on your finished pouch. If, however, you are using woven fabric for your snap connectors, then use the snap connector pattern piece as a template to cut 4 pieces of Decoville Light. So as you can see, I used this exact pattern piece to cut the stabilizer in exactly the same size and shape. You will also need an extra piece of fabric that is large enough so later you can fuse this stabilizer to the back and have enough space around for the seam allowance. You will also need to cut 2 bottom panels from external fabric, 1 base from external fabric, 1 side connector from external fabric. If you are using non-fraying fabric, then cut it from non-fraying fabric instead. You will need to cut 1 front and 1 back from external fabric, 1 pocket facing from your lining fabric, 1 base lining from your lining fabric, 2 zipper pockets from your lining fabric, and lastly 1 front lining and 1 back lining from your lining fabric. As you can see, I cut my fusible fleece without the seam allowance. This way I don't really have to worry about an excess bulk, and I fused it to all external pieces. To begin, take your pocket facing and on the wrong side of the fabric, draw a rectangle for the zipper opening. So what I like to do is to take my pattern piece and cut out that window. This way I can just place my pattern piece on top, take my pen and trace the rectangle. Make sure you have midpoints marked as well, so it is easy for you to align. Now you can take your front lining piece and place the facing on top. So what you want to do is to make sure right sides are facing each other. You want to center the pocket facing on top and make sure it is located 4 centimeters down from the top edge. So what I like to do is to take my ruler. I have a midpoint mark here, so I know exactly how to place my facing. I'm going to measure 4 centimeters from the top edge and then place the edge of the facing against the ruler, just like that. If you want, you can pin or clip those 2 pieces together. Otherwise, we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch along that rectangle. So you want to be very precise, and to make sure you don't have bulky corners, I highly recommend starting somewhere in the center. So you're going to start somewhere here, go around the rectangle. So don't backstitch either on the beginning or the end. Instead, stitch over those first couple of stitches. Once you've got that stitched, you're going to take a ruler and your pen and draw a line in the center of that rectangle, but stop about 10 to 15 millimeters from each side. Here we go, just like that. Then what you want to do is to connect the end of that line to each corner. Here we go. When you are ready, you can take your scissors and cut the fabric along those lines. So what I like to do is to take a pin and pin it at the corner. This way, I don't have to worry about cutting too far, because what you want to do is to avoid cutting through the stitching line. So you do not want to cut through the stitching line. So by putting those pins at the corners, I know I don't have to worry about cutting my fabric too much. So next, fold your fabric in half, snip it in the center, and then you'll be able to take your scissors and cut along the lines. So take your time, be precise. What you want to do is to cut as close to the stitching line as possible without actually cutting through the stitching. Here we go. Then you can remove those pins, and next you can take this to the pressing station. Now, using the opening, you're going to flip the facing to the back of your lining piece. So take your time, be gentle. You don't want to rip your fabric. Here we go. And then you can press the seams nice and flat. So I like to do that in 2 stages. So first, I'll open the seam allowance and I press it flat. I do that along those 2 longer edges. Here we go. And next, I'll be able to flip that down and press the seam nice and flat. If you do have any puckering or pleats around those corners, it means that you didn't snip the fabric close enough to the stitching line. So in this situation, simply take your scissors and try to snip the fabric slightly closer to the stitching line. Now you can take your zipper pockets and fold the bottom edge by 1 centimeter towards the wrong side of the fabric. So what I like to do is to take my piece and measure 2 centimeters from the bottom edge, draw a line. This way I can bring the bottom edge towards the line and press my fabric nice and flat. Now you're going to take one of your zipper pockets and trim it down by 1.5 centimeters. So again, you can take a ruler, measure 1.5 centimeters from the top edge, draw a line, then take your scissors and trim away that excess. When you are ready, you're going to take your number 3 zipper and place it along the top edge of your pocket. So you need to decide which way you want the zipper to open, from left to right or right to left, and place it in opposite direction. So for example, I like my zippers to open from left to right. So I need to place my zipper the opposite way. So it actually opens from right to left, just like that. So right sides are facing up. You're going to line up the zipper along the top edge. You can clip it or pin it to the fabric. Here we go. Then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to base the pocket about 2 millimeters from the edge. Next, you're going to apply double-sided tape along each side of your zipper. Then take your front lining piece and we're going to place the zipper inside the window. So you're going to place the pocket like this. So the pocket is upside down. This way our zipper will open in the direction that we initially wanted. So now what you want to do is to remove the plastic cover from your tape and center the zipper inside that window. Here we go. Then you can take this to the machine and stitch only along the bottom edge. So if you want, you can back stitch at the beginning and the end. Otherwise, if you prefer more of a neat finish, you can leave long thread tails along each end. Then pull the thread tail to the back of the fabric and tie knots to secure them in place. So as you can see, I have the bottom edge stitched. I left long thread tails. So now I'm going to pull the thread to the back of the fabric. So I like to take a pin or a needle to do that. Grab on this little loop and tie a knot to secure those thread tails. Just like that. I do that a couple of times. Then cut the excess, and to prevent the knots from unraveling, I like to dab a little bit of multi-surface glue on top. Once the glue is dry, you can take this to the pressing station, bring the pocket down, and then you can press the seam nice and flat. Now you're going to take your remaining zipper pocket and apply double-sided tape along the top edge. Then remove the plastic cover, just like this. Take the other zipper pocket and your front lining. Place this pocket on top. So right sides are facing each other. You want to line up the bottom folded edges and your sides. Here we go. And then you can press along the top edge. So the double-sided tape sticks to the fabric. If you want, you can use a couple of clips to hold your pockets in place. Just like that. When you are ready, you can take this to the machine, top stitch along the remaining sides of the pocket opening. So if you want, you can back stitch at the beginning and the end. Otherwise, like previously, leave long thread tails, then pull them to the back of the fabric and tie knots to secure them in place. Next, you're going to fold the lining out of the way and you're going to stitch the pockets along both sides. Leave the bottom edge open as it is. We're going to use this opening later on to finish sewing the lining. Take your external front, and if you have install your name tag. Then you're going to take number 5 zipper and place it on top. So keep your zipper pull or zipper pulls separately. You don't want to put them on your zipper just yet, because later we're going to separate our zipper. So there is no point of you doing this step twice. So take your zipper and place it facing down on top of your front. You want to make sure it is centered. Then line up the edges and clip or pin them together. Here we go. Next, you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to baste the zipper along the top edge. Once this is basted, you can take your front lining piece and place it on top. So right sides are facing each other. Line up the top edge. So make sure this top cutout is aligned. Just like that. Line up the edges. Clip them together. Here we go. Then we can take this to the machine and sew the seam. Once you've got that stitched, you can take this to the pressing station, separate the pieces, press the seam nice and flat, then bring those two pieces wrong sides together and again press the seam nice and flat. There you go. Next, you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch along that finished seam. Once you've got that top stitched, you can take the external back and back lining piece and repeat the steps on the other side of the zipper. This is how it should look like. So now you can separate your zipper. Then you're going to bring the external pieces right sides together, line them up, and then do the same thing for the lining pieces. So I like to do it separately. So first you're going to line up the external pieces and clip or pin them along the side edges. So don't worry about the bottom edge at the moment. Keep the zipper tape out of the way. Here we go. Then we're going to do exactly the same thing for the lining. So keep the zipper out of the way, line up the sides, clip them together, and do that on the other side as well. Clip them together. When you are ready, you can take this to the machine and sew those 4 side seams. So you're going to sew them separately, so do not stitch over the zipper. You want to make sure when you are at the machine, keep the lining and zipper out of the way, sew the external pieces, and then you're going to do that for the lining. So again, you're going to keep the external and zipper out of the way and sew the lining side seams. Next, you're going to take this to the pressing station, open the panels, Then open the seam allowance and press it flat. So if you have seam roll or tailor's ham, this step might be a little bit easier. Here we go. And you're going to do that on all 4 seams. When you are ready, you're going to turn your pouch right side out. So bring the external and lining pieces wrong sides together. Here we go. Then making sure our side seams are aligned, our seam allowance is open. We're going to line up the top edge. So we have a small opening where the zipper ends on both sides. So you want to make sure the lining and external pieces are aligned, your seam is aligned. Then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to base the fabric around the cutout on both sides of the pouch. Now you can take your zipper pull or zipper pulls and add them to your zipper. So that's why we are using slightly longer zipper, so it is easier for us to put them on. Here we go. If like me you are using one, then close the zipper completely. So you're going to have to pull the zipper pull out of your zipper on the other side and then add it again, because you want to make sure both of the ends of your zipper are closed. If you are using two, you don't have to do that because you're going to put the zipper pull on both sides. Now we're going to sort of box the corners at each end of our zipper. So to do that, you're going to separate the front and back, just like that. And line up your side seams in the center of the zipper. So I typically do that in stages. I make sure my lining is aligned so I can see everything is nice and straight. And then I'll double check if my external piece is also aligned. You want to make sure the side seam is straight with your zipper. You don't want to have like a wonky side seam, because once we construct our pouch, your pouch will be wonky as well. So to ensure we box the corners properly and we have a nice straight pouch, make sure your side seams are straight on top of your zipper. So I'm just going to take my time, double check if everything is nice and straight. I like to put my finger inside just to smooth out those edges to avoid any pleats inside. When you are happy with everything, grab a couple of clips and clip those sides just like that. Then you can repeat that on the other side as well. So again, you want to make sure your lining side seam is centered with the zipper, and then center the external side seam with the lining. Make sure there is no pleats, no puckering inside, and clip it. Here we go. So this is how it should look like. So next we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to base the fabric across the zipper on both sides of our pouch. All right, once you've got those ends basted, you can take scissors and trim the excess zipper. I like to take my lighter and just burn the edges quickly, just to prevent the zipper from fraying. When making snap connectors from woven fabric, you're going to take your extra piece of fabric and 4 pieces of stabilizer and fuse the stabilizer to the back of the fabric. So you want to make sure you have enough space around to add seam allowance. So about 5 millimeters to 1 centimeter seam allowance around. Now you can take your scissors or pinking shears and leaving about 5 millimeters to 1 centimeter seam allowance, cut around each stabilizer. Then what you can do is to take this to the pressing station and press the seam allowance towards the back of the fabric, just like that. As you can see, I have 2 connectors ready. However, I prefer to use multi-surface glue or fabric glue instead. So what I do is to apply some glue along the edge of my stabilizer around the connector. So I'm just going to slowly apply a small amount of glue along the edge. You want to make sure it is evenly spread. Here we go. Then I can simply fold my fabric on top and glue it to the back of the stabilizer. So around the corners I like to use an awl and just help myself out. You'll need to create tiny pleats around those corners to make sure the fabric looks nice and neat from the right side. So this can be a little bit fiddly, but as long as you take your time, you'll have a very nice connectors. So I would say it's better and easier if you are going to glue the seam allowance. It is easier if you leave slightly smaller seam allowance. But if you are pressing it with an iron, 1 centimeter seam allowance is better. So I'm going to check from the right side to see if I have a nice smooth edges. Then just adjust if I need to. Here we go. I like to use a seam roller just to press on those edges. Here we go. And then I basically repeat the process until I have 4 connectors ready. When you are ready, take 2 of your connectors, the one that are on top. So just in case if you are using an accent fabric, let me show you what I mean. So here I have the snap connector and I used 2 different fabric prints, as you can see. So I used an accent fabric on top. So you want to make sure that you're going to take 2 pieces that are the top side of your connector, not the underside. Then you can take your snap connector pattern piece and we're going to transfer the snap placement markings and the stitching notches to the right side of our fabric. So make sure you are using removable pen for that. So I'm going to mark those snap placement markings and also the stitching notches on one connector, and I'll do exactly the same on the other connector. Next, we're going to install the male parts of our snaps. So take your hole puncher and punch a hole through the snap placement marking in the center of your connector. Here we go. And then you can install your snap. I have a separate video tutorial that will show you exactly how to install the metal spring press snaps, just in case if you need some help. Next, you can take the remaining two pieces, apply some double-sided tape on the back. So I typically apply it in the center, and as a side note, don't go above the snap. So as you can see, my double-sided tape ends here. You don't want to add double-sided tape or glue beyond or above the snap, because later we're going to open those two pieces and place our pouch in between. So you want to make sure you can still do that. So I prefer to use double-sided tape for this step and not necessarily a glue. You can even use clips or pins if you are worried about, messing things up. So place them wrong sides together, line up the edges, and repeat that on the other connector. Now you can take this to the machine, and we're going to sew those two connectors together. So you're going to start at one notch, go around the bottom, and you're going to stop at the other notch. You are leaving the top unstitched, so the top edge is open, and you're going to do that on both connectors. Once you've got that stitched, then you can install the female part of the snap. So again, take your hole puncher, punch a hole through the snap placement. Then what you want to do is to make sure the right side or the cap of your snap is from the underside of your connector, because we're going to fold it like this and snap it in place. Here we go. So this is how it should look like. Next, you're going to take your pouch, and when we previously boxed the corners along the ends of our zipper, we're going to feed those box corners into the snap connectors. So we want to cover the raw edge. So I have stitched one, so you can see exactly how it looks like. So what you want to do is to take your connector, separate those two pieces so you have an opening. Remember, the top edge is unstitched, so you have an opening. Then feed the pouch or the zipper inside. So you want to place the end, that boxed corner, the end of your zipper into the snap connector, just like this. So remember, both sides are covering the raw edge. So make sure your connector is straight with the zipper. It is not wonky. So it is straight. You want to push the pouch as far as it is possible, but don't worry, it's not going to go too far because we have the stitching here. So this will prevent you from going too far, but you want to make sure you have a nice and tight fit. So Ensure your connector is centered, it is straight. Then what you can do is to take a couple of clips and clip that in place, just like this. Next, we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch the top edge of our connector. So start at one notch, stitch the top edge and stop at the other notch. Once you have both of your connectors stitched, you can place your pouch aside for a second. Then you can take your side connector. If you are making side connector from woven fabric, then take your connector to the pressing station. If you want, draw a line in the center of your connector on the wrong side of the fabric. Then what you want to do is to fold those longer edges towards the center and then press it flat. Then you're going to do that on the other side. Press it flat. Here we go. When you are ready, you can take this to the machine now and top stitch along those two folded edges. As a side note, if you are using non-frame fabric for your side connector, such as cork, vinyl or faux leather, you will find separate pattern piece that does not include the seam allowance. So you don't have to fold those edges towards the center like we did on the woven fabric. So in this situation, you'll have slightly narrower piece, and then you can still take this to the machine and top stitch along those two sides. This will add an extra detail to your connector and also add a little bit of strength. However, if you are using very lightweight, thin or even slightly stretchy non-frame fabric, you can either apply small amount of stabilizer at the center to prevent the fabric from stretching, or use the pattern piece for woven fabric, which means you will have to fold those edges towards the center and then top stitch along those two folded edges. Before you do that, make sure your machine can sew through all that bulk. Now you're going to take your connector and fold it in half, just like this. Then take your scissors and cut it along that fold. This way you'll create two smaller connectors. Then you're going to grab your D-ring and feed the connector through the D-ring and wrap it around that straight edge, just like that. So wrong sides are facing each other. Clip that or pin that in place. Do that on the other connector as well. When you are ready, take this to the machine and baste along those two shorter edges. Next, you're going to take your pouch and align your side connectors in the center of the side seam. So make sure you keep the lining out of the way and center the connector along the side seam. You want to clip that, then do that on the other side as well. Here we go. Then we can take this to the machine and we're going to baste the connectors to our pouch. Take your bottom panels and place them right sides together. Line up the edges and then clip or pin along those two shorter sides. Here we go. Then when you are ready, take this to the machine and sew those two seams. Next, you can take this to the pressing station, open the seam allowance and then press it flat. Do that on both seams. Here we go. Then what you can do is to take this to the machine and top stitch along both sides of the seam, catching the seam allowance underneath. If you worry about an excess bulk, what you can do is to take scissors and trim the seam allowance at an angle, just like that. This will slightly reduce the bulk later when you're going to stitch the top and bottom seam. Now you're going to take your pouch and your bottom panels and place them right sides together. So I like to just feed my pouch through, just like this. Make sure your side seams are matching. So first you want to match your seams, match the bottom edges, clip them together. Do that on the other side as well. Here we go. Then you'll be able to align the edges and clip the bottom panel around the pouch. Here we go. When you are ready, make sure your lining is out of the way. You don't want to stitch through the lining. You're going to take this to the machine and sew the seam. Once you've got that seam stitched, you can separate those two pieces. Then take this to the pressing station and press the seam allowance down. So you want to press it towards the bottom panel. Then take this to the machine and top stitch along that finished seam. Next, you can open the zipper and turn the pouch wrong side out. Keep the lining, your side connectors, your snap connectors out of the way. Then you can take your base panel and line it up along the bottom edge of your pouch. Make sure you have midpoints along the front and back of your pouch, and also midpoints along each side of your base panel. Then with right sides together, match them up. So match the midpoint along the front along the back. Then match the side midpoints with your side seams. Here we go. And next you'll be able to line up the edges and just clip the base around the pouch. When you get to those rounded corners, it might be easier if you snip the bottom panel slightly. So I'll typically take my scissors and snip the seam allowance every 5 millimeters. So that's a 1/4 of an inch, just like that. This will allow you to open the fabric like this, so the seam allowance basically spreads, and you'll find it much easier to align those two edges together. Then you can repeat that on all corners. Once you have this clipped, you can take this to the machine and sew the seam. If you don't like to use clips, especially when you are sewing around the curves, you can either hand baste the seam or staple the seam. So I know a lot of my pattern testers prefer to simply staple those pieces together and remove the clips. This will prevent the fabric from shifting. So that's an option as well if you find sewing with the clips a little bit more difficult. What I also found through trial and error and practice is that I actually prefer to sew my seam from this side. So I lay the base panel flat on top of my machine and I stitch from this side. This way I have more control and I don't have to worry about the puckering underneath. Once you've got that seam stitched, you can take your scissors or pinking shears and trim the seam allowance by half. Now you can turn your pouch right side out. Double check if you are happy with the seam, if there is no puckering, no pleats. If you are happy with everything, then you're going to open the zipper pocket, pull out the pocket bag, and then using the opening in that pocket bag, you want to pull out the lining. So this may be a little bit awkward, so just take your time. Here we go, pull out your lining. Then take your base lining and repeat the steps. So again, make sure you have midpoints marked on the front, on the back. Make sure you have midpoints along each side of your base lining. Then you're going to match them up. So match your midpoints, match the edges, clip them together. Again, if you have to, clip the seam allowance around those curved corners. Then when you are ready, you can take this to the machine and sew the seam. Again, take your scissors or pinking shears and trim the seam allowance by half. Insert the lining back into your pouch. And lastly, we're going to close the opening in our pocket. So what you want to do is to line up those two folded edges, clip them together. Here we go. Then you can take this to the machine and stitch close to the edge. Once you've got that stitched, you can insert the pocket back into the pocket. Push on the seams, make sure everything looks nice and neat. Close your zipper. You can snap your snap connector, so fit it through the D-ring on the side and snap it in place, just like this. Do it on the other side as well. Give your pouch a final press if you have to. Otherwise, the Maya Toiletry Pouch is now finished. Well done! I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if you've got any questions, and if you want to stay up to date and see any of my future videos, make sure to subscribe to my channel. See you next time! Stay crafty, friends! Bye!